Mitchell, welcome back to Portland.
Thank you.
Big day here at Powell's talking
Big day.
about survival math.
Yep.
What's survival math? What's in that name? What do we see in that book?
Survival math, the name came from me feeling threatened when I was young in the community, probably around 2000, late 90s, and trying to really stay alive to keep from being harmed. And so it was the kind of calculations that I made in the moment when there was like a real serious threat. Yeah. But it also is about kind of the ways in which the kind of larger community survives their obstacles as well.
What did that experience growing up teach you?
It taught me to always to not be rash, right? To always kind of think through my decisions, even when it seemed like it was just a moment. There was a lot of kind of critical thinking going into just whatever decision I was going to make in the moment. I think a lot of people that kind of valued rashness or acting in a way that didn't really take a lot of reasoning, they ended up in far worse places than me.
2000 would have been quite some time before I got here.
Yes.
Probably a lot of Portland in general.
Yeah.
What was the city like back in that year or at that time of year? What do you maybe take most out of that era?
I think in that era it was shifting. In the 2000s, people were moving into the community that, I guess I should back up and say from 1948, right? So the Vanport flood until maybe into the early 2000s or late 90s, like the community was an African American community. And it seemed like we were segregated, but it also felt very insular. So I didn't really recognize that things were so different in my community until I kind of left and then came back. And then around 2000, people started coming in and offering money for, new places or offering money for homes, and the demographics of the community started to shift in, what it looks like today over in Northeast.
Yeah, you fast forward to 2019 now, and
yeah,
to you, that probably looks like a totally different place, a foreign land of sorts.
Yeah.
When you come back, what do you take away from what do you see now?
I think what I take away from it, we love a duplex, and we love the little shotguns. Yeah. I don't know what they call those, attached homes or something. But I think what I see is now with the kind of research that I've done, what I see is the fruition of years and years of planning. And you could take it back to the Constitution of Oregon, or you could probably revisit some of the earlier redlining, so some of kind of the real estate codes that excluded certain people from certain areas. And now here's the fruit of that. Though I think for certain groups of people, this really feels like it's close to a utopia as they might be able to get. Yeah.
For the community, for the African American community over there now, do you hear stories from people who were here, I guess, throughout all of that, or their experiences? Do they sound a lot like what you went through?
Yes, I do think my experience is not exceptional, and that's, is disheartening, I guess. But then there's the kind of, I think one of the things that I'm trying to do with this book is kind of look at the social and cultural causes for a whole group of people in an era to kind of go through the similar experiences. And so, yes, I hear people talking. People are upset at being displaced, and I can totally agree with feeling like you're being moved aside and then not having the option to go where you want.
Yeah, you may have just answered my next question, but as you said, was that the common theme, or what were some of the common themes that you put down on the paper? Or?
I think. In the epigraph, I say that that when Africans came to this country, 40% of them died, either marching to the East Coast to be shipped or in the transatlantic passage. And so that means that the 60% that actually made it in the generations thereafter are really explicitly survivors. And so I think one of the things that I took away from this is, yes, there's been a lot of trauma, but also there's a lot of resiliency in the people that I know, and I want that to be highlighted just as much as the kind of tribulations that we faced.
Sure. I think of a couple of cities off the top of my head, like Austin, Texas, or just all over the place. But what lessons do you think Portland learned or should have learned through all of this that we maybe see some of this happening elsewhere in the country now? I guess any advice you'd offer up, or do you think Portland learned anything through this or could have done something in a different way?
I mean, I think Portland has learned the lessons that it wanted to learn. Like Portland has the community that it wants. I mean, I think there's probably always dissent on the kind of monolithic culture that we have here, but like that is a feature of having a monolith, that everyone's not going to agree with it. But I think that the city planners, the politicians, pretty much have what they desired. And you can look at the influx of people coming from elsewhere to know that this is attractive to a lot of people from all over the country.
When people pick up survival math, what do you want them to take away?
I want them to take away that the stories are not just that simple, and that they should. I'm happy that people want to read the stories and hear about the narratives, but I also want people to examine the ideas and to know that each one of these stories comes out of historicity, right? That you have to contextualize it in history in order to really understand it, and otherwise you're just kind of a voyeur for someone else's trauma.
Maybe lastly, at least for me, I know Matt might have a question or two, but I guess growing up here in Portland, ever think you'd be back at Powell's talking about your life, your experience growing up, and then having your book showcased over there?
If you asked me this before I moved to New York, no. But I think the first reading that I came to here was Walter Mosley in like 1998. And I remember, I didn't even buy a book, which was really whack of me. But I went up to him and I said, Mr. Mosley, I'm so glad you're here, and like I'm gonna move to New York and I'm gonna be a writer, and like I'm gonna look you up when I get there. And he was like, okay, son. And here we are now. I have looked him up and had conversations with Walter Mosley out there. So it feels like a full circle moment for me to be back here.